absorption of amino acids. So these amino acids after digestion, they should get absorbed from the intestine, and then they will be distributed to other parts of the body cells. Now this absorption is significant with respect to the amino acids. In the nature, mostly L type of amino acids are present. These L amino acids, they are actively transported across the intestinal mucosa. Means active transport means it requires energy for their transportation. That is why it is called active transport. Passive transport does not require any energy. So transportation of amino acids is active transportation across the intestinal mucosal cell. So active transport means here it is mentioned, see, it needs a carrier protein for its transport, and it needs sodium pump to be acted, sodium ions, ATP. All these things are required for the transportation of L amino acids, or means transportation means absorption of amino acids into the intestinal mucosal cell from the lumen of the intestine. So different carrier transport systems are present. For different types of amino acids. We have studied about all the 20 types of amino acids. Now you know what is neutral amino acid, what is basic amino acid, what is acidic, what is sulfur containing amino acid, what is hydroxy aromatic amino acids. So all these things you have studied in the classification and chemistry of amino acids. Okay, so there are different types of carrier transport systems are available for the absorption of amino acids. For neutral amino acids, different transport system is there. For basic amino acids and cysteine, there is a different type of carrier transport system is there. For amino acids and glycine, there is a different type of carrier system. And for acidic amino acid absorption, another type of carrier transport system is there. And for beta amino acids like beta alanine and taurine, there is a different type of transport system is there. So the D isomers are transported by simple diffusion. Of course, in the nature, mostly L amino acids are present, but there are sometimes D amino acids are also present. So these D amino acids are transported by simple diffusion. It does not require any carrier for the transportation or absorption. But D isomers, so they undergo absorption by simple diffusion. L amino acids only are actively transported across the intestinal mucosal cell. We will see what is the transport carrier system for the amino acid absorption in the intestinal lumen cell. We will see. So amino acid absorption by secondary active transport. This is called secondary active transport. Here, let's say this is a blood vein. This is the intestinal cell, and this is the intestinal lumen. In the intestinal lumen only the digestion of food is taking place. Now proteins are digested and free amino acids are released during the process of digestion. So these free amino acids will be absorbed by the intestinal mucosal cell in the intestine. Okay. Now see here, this is a carrier protein. This is a carrier protein that is present on the intestinal mucosal cell. It is present on the intestinal mucosal cell. Through this carrier protein only the absorption of amino acid takes place. The amino acid absorption is sodium dependent. So sodium pump and the carrier protein should work together for the amino acid absorption. So for the amino acid absorption of one amino acid, one sodium ion is also required. So for every amino acid absorption, sodium is also transported into the intestinal lumen, into the intestinal mucosal cell from the intestinal lumen. Now this amino acid, through another carrier protein, it is transported into the portal vein. This carrier protein is called facilitated transporter. Now the sodium that enters from the carrier sodium pump, through the sodium pump which enter into the intestinal mucosal cell, through another sodium potassium pump. Through sodium potassium pump, sodium will be sent out of the lumen, intestinal mucosal cell, into the lumen, and potassium will be reabsorbed. So here if you see, for sending the sodium from the inside the cell to outside, it spends one ATP. ATP is required. So that is why here energy is used. So that is why it is said active transport, means it is consuming energy. So for the amino acid absorption, sodium is coming along with the amino acid through the carrier protein, and to send this sodium out, because the sodium should not accumulate in the cells. It is an extracellular cation. It is an extracellular cation. So from the cell it should go out of the cell. So to send this sodium out, sodium potassium pump will take this sodium and sends this sodium out and takes the potassium inside. But to send the sodium out through the sodium potassium pump, it requires energy called ATP. ATP is spent. ATP is converted to ADP and inorganic phosphate. So the potassium enters inside, sodium goes outside. So now amino acid through the another facilitated carrier protein or transport protein, it is absorbed into the portal circulation and sent to the liver. So this is how the active transportation of amino acids takes place. Active transportation, absorption of amino acids takes place. Now the same thing is explained in a simple way here. So this is a carrier protein which is present on the outer membrane of the outer side cell membrane of the mucosal cell. So through this carrier protein, one amino acid enters into the cell, and from the cell, the sodium is present inside the amino acid through another carrier protein from the intestinal mucosal cell is transported into the blood circulation or portal way. So this sodium should not accumulate in the body. So for that matter, what will happen? The sodium from the cytoplasm through sodium potassium pump in antiport mechanism, the sodium will be sent out and potassium will be taken inside. This is operated by sodium potassium pump. So sodium will be sent into the extracellular fluid again. Okay, so this is how the amino acid absorption is energy dependent cycle, and certain amino acids are operated by a special kind of absorption, and it requires a special kind of protein called gamma glutamine, glutathione is a GSH, gamma glutamyl cysteine glycine. It is glutathione. Glutathione is a tripeptide made up of three amino acids. So this glutathione is a tripeptide, is acting as a carrier protein for the absorption of certain types of amino acids in the from the intestinal lumen. So this kind of transportation or absorption of amino acids is studied under Meester's cycle. This Meester's cycle is also called as gamma glutamyl cycle. Meester's cycle is also called as gamma glutamyl cycle. So in the intestine, kidney tubules and brain, the absorption of neutral amino acids is operated by gamma glutamyl cycle or Meester's cycle. This gamma glutamyl cycle or Meester's cycle is operated in the intestine, in the kidney tubules and in the brain cells. Okay. So now how the absorption or transportation of amino acids takes place by Meester's cycle, we will see. The main role is played by a tripeptide called glutathione, GSH. Glutathione is made up of three amino acids. Tripeptide means yes, three amino acids and two peptide bonds will be there. It is containing three amino acids. It reacts with the amino acid to form gamma glutamyl amino acid. What this glutathione will do for the absorption of amino acids or for the transport of amino acids, this glutathione which is present on the cell membrane reacts with the amino acids and form gamma glutamyl amino acid. So this is catalyzed by the enzyme gamma glutamyl transferase. enzyme called gamma glutamyl transferase. Gamma glutamyl transferase enzyme catalyzes the binding of amino acids with a tripeptide called glutathione on the cell membrane. Okay. Now the direct result is the transport of amino acid across the membrane takes place. Now this amino acid is bound to the glutathione. Now glutathione, which is present outside, turns towards inside of the cell. As a result, amino acid comes inside the cell and it is released in the cytoplasm. Now again glutathione moves outside of the cell membrane. So as a result, transport of one molecule of amino acid and regeneration of glutathione requires 3 molecules of ATP. So glutathione carries one amino acid at a time by oxidation reduction. So this reduction and oxidation process requires continuous regeneration of glutathione. So glutathione, to regenerate after transport, it takes 3 ATPs. So this is an energy dependent process. This is an energy requirement process. So that is why this is a active transport. Now see in this diagram, I have shown the gamma glutamyl cycle here. Now this is the cell membrane of the intestinal mucosal cell. So lipid bilayer. Cell membrane is made up of lipid bilayer. 2 lipid layers will be there, one side outside and inside. Okay. So this we have already discussed about the cell membrane structure and all, so I am not talking about this. This is the cell membrane and this is the intestinal lumen where the digested amino acids are present. Okay. Now these digested amino acids should be absorbed into the intestinal cell. This requires a carrier protein. That carrier protein is called glutathione. This glutathione consists of 3 amino acids. There is glutamine, cysteine, glycine. So this glutathione is also called as gamma glutamyl cysteine glycine. Now this glutathione acts as a carrier protein for the transportation of amino acids. What it will do, which is this glutathione which is present on the cell membrane, binds with the amino acid by the enzyme gamma glutamyl transferase. So gamma glutamyl transferase or gamma glutamyl transpeptidase catalyzes the binding of amino acids with glutathione and results in the formation of a compound called glutamyl amino acid. So during this formation, what will happen? Glutamate only will be retained. Cysteine glycine is released. Now glutamyl amino acid is formed. Now this glutamyl amino acid, which is present on the cell membrane outside, is moved inside and transports the amino acid inside the cell. Now amino acid is released by the action of the enzyme gamma glutamyl cyclotransferase. What it will do? It causes the release of amino acid in the cell and converts this glutamate into oxoproline. Now this oxoproline is converted to glutamate by the enzyme 5-oxoprolinase. So oxoproline to glutamate formation catalyzes by the enzyme 5-oxoprolinase. Here it requires ATP. ATP is required and converted to ADP and inorganic phosphate. So this is one ATP is consumed in this reaction during the process of regeneration of glutathione. Now this glutamate by another enzyme called gamma glutamyl cysteine synthetase. Now this this cysteine, which is released here as cysteine glycine, the cysteine and glycine both are separated. Now this cysteine comes and reacts with the glutamate by the enzyme gamma glutamyl cysteine synthetase. This glutamate is converted to glutamyl cysteine. This is also an energy dependent reaction. ATP molecule is utilized. In the next step, this glutamyl cysteine condenses with the glycine and results in the formation of glutathione again. This reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme glutathione synthetase. So gamma glutamyl cysteine reacts with the glycine by the action of the enzyme glutathione synthetase and is converted into glutathione. This is also another energy dependent reaction. ATP is consumed. So total 1, 2, 3 ATPs are consumed to regenerate the glutathione back. So continuous supply of glutathione is required for the absorption of amino acid after the digestion of proteins. So this is called gamma glutamyl cycle or Mister cycle, which is very important to operate for the absorption of amino acids after the digestion of food. So that is about the absorption. Now the dietary proteins can be antigenic also. Some dietary proteins, because some individuals there may be absorption of some unhydrolyzed proteins probably by pinocytosis. So this is one type of absorption. This gamma glutamyl cysteine glycine is one type of cycle, one type of absorption which is by which the absorption of amino acids is taking place in the intestine. Similarly, there is a mechanism called pinocytosis, endocytosis is there. So this pinocytosis or endocytosis is a type of absorption mechanism which facilitates the transportation of molecules across the membrane. So in such cases, sometimes some of the unhydrolyzed proteins are absorbed by a mechanism called pinocytosis. So in such cases, these unhydrolyzed proteins can become antigenic to the host organism or to the body. So to be antigenic, the protein must be of 6 to 7 amino acids in size. So it should, that unhydrolyzed protein, if it is of 6 to 7 amino acids in length, then this can be a antigenic. And this has molecular weight which have about 820 to 928 Daltons also. So to be an antigenic compound, this protein must be consisting of 6 to 7 amino acids minimum, and its molecular weight should be about 820 to 928 Daltons, and it has glutamine and proline also. Glutamine and proline must be there among the 6 to 7 amino acids. Then only this unhydrolyzed protein can become antigenic. And some intact proteins are there during the absorption process, such as immunoglobulins of colostrum. This colostrum is the first milk that is secreted from the mother to in the milk. First milk that is secreted after the delivery of the baby by a mother is called colostrum. This colostrum consists of lot of immunoglobulins which will give protection to the baby after the feeding. So this milk colostrum consists of lot of immunoglobulins which are very essential for the development of immunity to the baby. So these immunoglobulins, when they are given in the form of colostrum or colostrum milk to the baby, it is absorbed by neonatal intestines through a process called endocytosis. Without loss of their biological activity. The immunoglobulins, they do not undergo any digestion in the intestine of the newborn baby. This is absorbed as it is by a process called endocytosis. So by endocytosis, if the immunoglobulins are absorbed, what will happen? They are not digested. So their biological activity will be still remaining. So thus they provide the passive immunity to the infants. Children, newborn babies. So immunoglobulins of colostrum are not digested by the infant intestine. They are absorbed by a process or mechanism called endocytosis. Next, vaccines. We give polio oral vaccine. You must have seen during the polio vaccine day. Then the oral vaccines, 2 drops of polio drops will be given. That is nothing but vaccine. So this vaccine, when you give in oral route, it is not undigested. Vaccine which is nothing but polypeptide. Okay, this is not digested in the children's intestine or in the adult's intestine. This is absorbed as it is without loss of their biological activity, producing antigenic reaction, and immunologic response. So if vaccine has to be effectively function in the body, it should not undergo any kind of digestion in the body. So it should be absorbed as it is. This absorption and all takes place by endocytosis or pinocytosis. Okay, so that they will not digest it. So such kind of things are called as intact proteins. These intact proteins are absorbed as it is from the intestine by a process called endocytosis or pinocytosis. Now coming to the disorders of amino acid absorption. So if these amino acids are not absorbed from the intestine, what will happen? We will not get essential amino acids from the diet. So this may result in some kind of disorders. So this is called disorders of amino acid absorption. So Hartnups disease is one amino acid disease which resulted because of the deficiency in the absorption of amino acids. So Hartnups disease occurs due to defect in absorption of aromatic amino acids. Due to defect in absorption of aromatic amino acids. Hartnups disease occurs due to defect in absorption of aromatic amino acids in the intestine and renal tubules. So intestine also aromatic amino acids are not absorbed, and the aromatic amino acids that are formed in the body are also not reabsorbed in the renal tubules, so they get excreted in urine. So aromatic amino acids are excreted in urine. So these patients suffer from a disease called pellagra due to the deficiency of amino acid niacin, which is synthesized from the aromatic amino acids. Deficiency of niacin compound. Niacin is a vitamin B complex which is required for the many biochemical reactions that are taking place in the body as a coenzyme. This niacin is required as a coenzyme for many reactions in the body. So if aromatic amino acids are not absorbed from the intestine, so the synthesis of niacin will not take place in the body. So as a result, niacin deficiency occurs in the body, and this may result in a condition called pellagra. So this niacin is derived from the aromatic amino acid tryptophan. So this deficiency of this absorption of aromatic amino acids in the intestine causes this condition called Hartnups disease. Okay, and in the renal tubules also these aromatic amino acids are not absorbed, so it will be excreted in the urine. So this results in the deficiency of the aromatic amino acids, and this tryptophan, 3 aromatic amino acids we have: tyrosine, tryptophan and phenylalanine. Phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan. Tryptophan is the amino acid which is responsible for the synthesis of a compound called niacin. Is a vitamin B complex which is required for the synthesis of which is required for the activation of many enzymes. So it acts as a coenzyme for many biological reactions in the body. So as a result, the deficiency of these aromatic amino acids in the body results in a condition called Hartnups disease. This is because of the defect in the absorption of aromatic amino acids in the intestine and renal tubules. Another disorder associated with the defective amino acid absorption is cystinuria. Cystinuria occurs due to defective absorption of cysteine in the intestine and renal tubules. So cysteine is a sulfur containing amino acid, is a very essential amino acid for the body. So in the both above diseases, there will be defective absorption of amino acids from the intestine, and renal excretion of amino acids also takes place. So cystinuria, absorption in the kidney tubules will not take place. So cysteine is not reabsorbed. As a result, cysteine is excreted in the urine. So cystinuria is a disorder of the proximal tubule reabsorption of the filtered cysteine, and dibasic amino acids like ornithine, arginine, lysine are not reabsorbed. As a result, what will happen? The cysteine which will be present is present in the urine of these patients. So this cysteine initial inability to reabsorb the cysteine leads to accumulation and subsequent precipitation of stones of cysteine is possible. So cysteine, when it is accumulated in the urine, it can precipitate and can develop in the stone formation also. So when these cysteine stones are excreted through the urethra in urine, it may cause damage to the urethra also. So cystinuria is somewhat infectious disease, so should be careful, should be ruled out carefully. This is because of defective absorption in the renal tubules of kidney. So cysteine is not absorbed properly, so it may be excreted in urine. So urine is stored in the bladder, so there it may get precipitate and it may develop into stones.